Was Andrew Mountbatten Windsor targeted by Russian spies, and was Epstein one of them? Will the King have to talk to the police? Why was Prince William heckled over it, and is Fergie already thinking about making a comeback? We've got another fascinating royal show for you. Now, let's get straight to it. Rebecca, you were at Windsor last night. Tell us all about it.
I was. Excuse my voice. I'm slightly suffering at the moment. Not through enjoying myself at Windsor.
OK.
So, big event last night. 400 guests. They were all people from the caring community. So either people who are paid or unpaid carers, which are the people that effectively keep our country going. The King was there, the Queen, Duchess of Edinburgh, the Duke and Duchess of Gloucester. So it was a big turnout, as was the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer. Now, it's the first time we've seen the King and Sir Keir together since the whole Epstein files saga broke open again, and both men have found themselves in the spotlight as a result of it for different reasons. So I highlighted that with a video on my social media, but what was funny, you know, that people picked up on was the body language between the King and Sir Keir, because let's just say Sir Keir was quite matey with His Majesty. You know, he shook his hand and then kind of patted him on the shoulder, and then the Queen came up and he kind of gave her a kiss on each cheek and patted her on the shoulder, and people seemed like slightly offended by that. They thought it was a little bit over familiar.
That odd one again. But they're not quite the same with protocol as the way that, you know, the late Queen was, were they?
No, they're not. And actually, they both take it in their stride, and it's quite clear. Actually, I think the King does get on fairly well with Sir Keir. But it was quite interesting. I think people picked up on it. A lot of eye rolling on social media. I also actually want to say hello to Dorothy, who's a very lovely lady there, who was one of the guests who saw me and came up to say hello, and she's a massive Palace Confidential fan.
Hello,
So
Dorothy.
hello, Dorothy.
Thank you, Dorothy. Did you speak to the Prime Minister?
I did. I interviewed him, but I promised him I would only ask him questions about the caring community. So
OK, yeah, understood.
I was on my best behaviour.
So, Richard, all of this comes as the government has dropped HM from their communications. Now, this is something that a lot of people, and I suspect probably including you, are upset about. Can you explain this?
Yeah, if I was the King, I would have, buttonholed the Prime Minister about this. So they've changed. All the correspondence was always His Majesty's government, which is what it is. It was all HM government. Well, they've quietly sneaked in a big change, and it's all just become UK government. And, you know, I would say it could be significant. We've got a socialist government there's a lot of Republicans among them. With all the controversies recently involving Prince Andrew, there's a lot of people on the left who are itching to cause problems for the royal family. And I do think the King needs to watch his back.
I'm amazed that, as it has always been called, His Majesty's, Her Majesty's government previously, it's what the name is on the tin. How can they make that change without consulting His Majesty?
I bet they wouldn't have done it if Queen Elizabeth was still alive.
I'm amazed they're allowed to.
She would have had something to say about it. Are they allowed? Who decides these things? I guess the government sort of sneaked it through without mentioning it to the palace. But
wow,
I'd like to see it change back. It is His Majesty's government.
What do you think, Rebecca?
Well, I agree with Richard, because, you know, everything in this country is dispensed because we have a constitutional monarch in their name. So, you know, the courts are run under His Majesty's names, you know, the prison service, things like that. And I think once you start tinkering with these things, it's a bit of a slippery slope.
And also without any overt conversation, seems a bit strange.
Well, I mean, look, maybe I'm a bit ignorant, but I didn't know they were going to do this until it was, you know, announced this week.
It was literally just spotted by people, wasn't it? It hadn't been announced or discussed at all.
Yeah.
That seems a bit shady, doesn't it?
It does.
Shady. Well, let's move on, because despite all of this, William is still working closely with our government, as he was on his visit to the Middle East as a guest of the Saudi royal family. And here is the Daily Mail's chief reporter, Sam Greenhill, who was out there with him.
The Prince of Wales has returned from an historic trip to Saudi Arabia, but despite being here 3,700 miles away from home, there was no escape from the Epstein and Andrew Mountbatten Windsor scandal. Kensington Palace strategists pondered for days about how to acknowledge the crisis around Prince William's uncle without jeopardising his mission to Saudi on behalf of the British government. He's just spent 3 days here in the capital, Riyadh, and elsewhere in the country. On the one hand, both William and Kate wanted to say something personally, but William was acutely aware that it might distract from the job he was supposed to be doing. What they came up with, the palace aides, was to release a statement whilst Prince William was in the air flying here, and hope that any furore that resulted from it would be over by the time he landed. We were told William and Kate are deeply concerned about the continuing Epstein revelations, and that the couple's thoughts remain focused on the victims of the child predator and his global network. This strategy had limited success because it didn't stop the prince having questions shouted at him by broadcasters about whether the royal family had done enough.
Sir, to what extent do you think the royal family has done enough around the Andrew and Epstein issue?
The Prince of Wales landed here in Riyadh on Monday and was taken straight to At Chiraif, which is an 18th century palace made out of mud bricks, and it's on the site of the birthplace of the Saudi kingdom. On his first full day, he met a group of girls aged 10 to 15 at football training and took part in a crossbar challenge with them. He told them they'd be at the World Cup soon enough and, quotes, "Then you're going to make me feel very old," he said. Women in the kingdom have been allowed to attend football games since 2017. That's the same year that PE was included in the curriculum at girls' schools for the first time. He also showed off his computer gaming skills, but was trounced in a game of Rocket League. That's a game that's a sort of cross between football and Demolition Derby, after cheerfully admitting that "I have no idea what I'm doing" when they started the game. William's side were beaten 3-2 and then again 2-1 in a rematch. William's soft power trip to meet the Saudi royals is of utmost importance to the British government, which asked him to come here. As Britain's future king, William acts as a sort of diplomatic secret weapon, opening doors that politicians can't. And our man in Riyadh here is certainly chuffed that he managed to land this royal visit, because it will help the ambassador and his team in their mission to ensure that Britain keeps its strong voice in the region. But William will be acutely aware of the sensitivities of his trip to Saudi, and he's not immune to criticism that he's travelling to a kingdom that stands charged with a whole catalogue of human rights abuses. The prince worked hard, and he would have flown back to London knowing he made a good impression here. Now he's back in Windsor with the family as the school holidays start.
Rebecca, Sam then mentioned the fact that the royals can often open doors that politicians can't, and that seems to be the key here with William, isn't it?
It is, and I'm actually very jealous of Sam being out on that trip, because my family situation, I can't go. But he's done a brilliant job of reporting for us on the Daily Mail. And yes, it's true, they do open doors, and that's why the British government asked the royal family to go to these places. It's not them saying, "Oh, let me stick in a pin and see, where I fancy going, on my hollybobs." There's serious process behind this. There are big trade links, military, diplomatic, investment opportunities out of it. And I remember going with King Charles when he was Prince of Wales, also to Saudi Arabia a few years ago, and a few government ministers popped up on the plane suddenly, and I was like, "Oh, where did you come from? What are you doing here?" And they said, "We've been trying to get these meetings for years." And it wasn't until we said, "Well, look, the Prince of Wales will come out and visit your country," and those doors suddenly opened. So I have seen the results of that famous soft diplomacy in action.
So interesting, isn't it? Because what we were just discussing is, it's still our government as well. The royals could say, "If you need us to open that door."
Absolutely, yeah.
I have to say, I was delighted to see Prince William with the girls playing football. Because it wasn't until 2017, just 9 years ago, that girls in Saudi Arabia were allowed to take part in physical education in schools. So to see him there, encouraging them to play football, or soccer as our American viewers would call it, is really encouraging, I think.
Yeah, well, that was a positive. But there was, on the downside, there was a shouted question, which we can see again here.
Sir, to what extent do you think the royal family has done enough around the Andrew and Epstein issue?
Yeah, the man shouts, "Sir, to what extent do you think the royal family has done enough around the Andrew and Epstein issue?" Now, the prince is in a tricky position there, isn't he, Richard?
Yes, he is. And I mean, personally, I'm delighted and grateful to live in a country where you can shout questions like that. I mean, Saudi Arabia is one country where it's much more dangerous to do so. But I think they knew that questions like this were coming, obviously, which is why they addressed it at the start with a statement from their William and Catherine spokesman. And I think they were hoping that would sort of put it to rest, so at least they could concentrate on what he's there for with the visit. But one of the reporters shouted a question. To be honest, I'm not even sure if William heard it.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear. But I think the reporter was doing his duty, and I think you will see more of that because, you know, there are big questions for the royal family to answer.
Well, I think we'll see more of it in a minute, but I just want to ask you, Rebecca, Sam mentioned and Richard mentioned the statement released ahead of the trip by the Prince and Princess. It might have set the tone, but it's not going to stop the inevitability of some of these questions, is it, around Andrew?
It's not, as Richard rightly says, you know, there are big questions for the royal family to answer at the moment. I mean, shouting out questions is not encouraged, it's not always considered the done thing, but I think there's an understanding that sometimes it is going to happen, even to the royal family in the way it does regularly to politicians. I know the palace, Kensington Palace, have been thinking about putting out a statement for some time. I think they hoped that it might be able to at least allow him to get on with the job he was out there to do. Maybe slightly naively, because of course it is the big issue that everyone's talking about. But I don't think it's fair to say it completely overshadowed his trip, because it still made great coverage, but obviously with the whole Epstein issue in the background.
Here's an interesting one, Richard. A report that just before William left the country suggested that he'd played a big role in Andrew's midnight dash, the move from Royal Lodge to Norfolk the other week. What's this all about?
Well, that's just suggestions that, you know, he was keen for his uncle to leave Windsor. Obviously, William and Catherine, their family, are neighbours at Windsor, and the publicity is not great. And, you know, seeing those images of Andrew, I was quite surprised to see, you know, like waving at passers-by and that sort of thing.
Very odd.
Yeah, it wasn't a great look, and so they've sort of regarded him as an embarrassment there. But I have to say, I have heard different things, because I've heard that one of William and Catherine's main concerns was about Andrew's welfare, that they were worried about his mental health and his state generally, and so they were concerned about that. So I have sort of heard mixed signals, and I think viewers will remember, you know, last week I said that personally I don't think shoving him off from Windsor to a private estate where he's looked after at the King's expense, personally I don't think that was a great move, but it sounds like William was quite keen to get rid of him as a neighbour.
Interesting. Well, Rebecca, we didn't see Catherine on this Middle East trip. Do we know what she was doing, and do you have any insight into when we might see William and Catherine on a joint engagement again?
On the latter question, there's nothing in the diary yet, I've been told, but watch this space, that I think there's a likelihood that it will happen at some point this year, possibly before the summer, but if not, maybe the autumn. As regards what she's doing, she was kind of busying herself behind the scenes. I think there's a keenness not to do a job that would overshadow the really important work that her husband was doing out in Saudi Arabia. And of course, I don't think it's a coincidence that we are seeing her out and about today, Thursday. Now William is safely back in the country, and she is visiting a school in Croydon in South London with Place to Be, one of her charities, talking about child mental health. So I think you can see how it's worked. You know, she's kept her head down while he's out there, and the minute he's back, she's out doing one of her very significant public duties.
Okay, well, thank you for that update. Now, William wasn't the only one having to deal with a question shouted at him that he didn't want to answer. Check this clip out.
We're going round the corner.
I've been pressurised. The police has got investigating Andrew.
Yep.
That was last week on a trip to Essex in the east of England, where a man shouted at the King, Charles, have you pressurised the police to start investigating Andrew? And it's understood that the King didn't appear to hear the man, who was escorted away by police. Then, during a walkabout in Clitheroe on Monday, we heard this.
Charles, how long have you known about Andrew and Epstein?
Richard, whether the King heard these heckles or not, he'll have found out what was shouted, and it will have surely had an impact.
It may have done, but I should give a bit of context here. I mean, he's been greeted by quite substantial crowds on his trips who are pleased to see him. And it does appear that, the people, or it may actually have been the same man who was shouting, is a member of a campaign group Republic, so deliberately causing trouble. Now, obviously, they've got the right to shout things out. And, sometimes people do say the king lives in a bit of a bubble, that, his advisors, he doesn't read the papers, he gets presented with sort of articles that he, might find interesting or useful, and so perhaps when he does actually hear things himself, it does have a bit of an influence.
I suppose he probably is very much across the news at the moment. We're not suggesting the two are linked, but a couple of days after that incident and several days of further stories linking Andrew and Epstein, this statement came from Buckingham Palace. It reads, "The King has made clear in words and through unprecedented actions his profound concern at allegations which continue to come to light in respect of Mr Mountbatten Windsor's conduct. While the specific claims in question are for Mr Mountbatten Windsor to address, if we are approached by Thames Valley Police, we stand ready to support them as you would expect." I think that's extraordinary, Rebecca. What do you make of it?
It is extraordinary and it is unprecedented. And I think it was overdue. I think we needed to hear something more. I mean, I do think the Palace are in a very, very difficult situation, but I think the King went as far as he could in expressing his concern and probably his personal outrage about the allegations that his brother is facing. I think the fact that the Palace have gone on the front foot and said, look, we haven't been approached by the police yet, but should they approach us? And maybe we should explain for viewers not in the UK, Thames Valley is the area where Windsor is. That's the police force that controls it. And Republic, this anti-monarchist group, have reported Andrew to the police now on two different occasions over two different issues. But, they've said, look, we are going to be proactive. If they come to us, we will talk to them. And that's a whole can of worms for the Palace, but it's clear that they feel it's something they've got to do. It
is unprecedented, but it's interesting, Rebecca, that you say that, the King's gone as far as he can, because, Richard, some observers are frustrated that this statement didn't contain a line anything like Andrew should speak to authorities to tell them everything he knows. And I know you've expressed similar sentiments. What's your view? Did he go far enough?
Well, no, I disagree with Rebecca in the sense that I don't think it was that extraordinary. I mean, what would have been extraordinary if they'd said, oh, we don't plan to cooperate with the police? I mean, that really would put the cat among the pigeons. But, I mean, what I would have liked to have seen, if not him escorting Prince Andrew to the local police station, at least saying in a statement, I have told my brother that he has to cooperate with the authorities, and told him that if he doesn't, I will stop paying him and stop accommodating him and stop sending servants round to cater to his every need. He needs to put pressure on him to do so. It's not enough just to say, oh, I'm a bit concerned about this. You do something. You're in charge. You're the king. He's your brother. I think he could have a lot of sway over him.
It's interesting, and I'm sure you'll be very lively on this in the comments. And there's been a development in the police investigation, and we'll get to that in a few minutes. Stick around, because it's an extraordinary state of affairs. But there are claims relating to Buckingham Palace too, that many are calling for the King to cooperate after yet another woman, a Romanian model this time, has come forward to say that she was taken to royal property to see Andrew. Rebecca, what do we know?
So this has come out through an email exchange between Andrew and Epstein, in which they're talking about a private dinner Andrew was holding for them at Buckingham Palace. It involved them and, let's just say, a number of ladies. And basically Epstein is saying, I want to add one to the list, this Romanian model. She's very cute, she's very clever. And there was this kind of really quite distasteful discussion by them afterwards, saying, Epstein was saying to this young lady, well, you really impressed him, and basically, she'd been worried that she was wearing jeans and it wouldn't be dressed up enough for Buckingham Palace, and he's going, oh, he sees right through your clothes. It was really gross.
Do we know her age?
I think it was 20 or 26. I'm trying to remember.
Okay,
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Yeah. He was younger than Prince Andrew.
Right. That's a given.
No suggestion she was under the age of consent, and we obviously don't know what happened. But again, what really disturbs me is this kind of suggestion that Epstein was almost using Buckingham Palace like a personal fiefdom, you know, to impress people, come and entertain them there. And Andrew was a willing protagonist in this. That's really troubling.
And what I found disturbing, I remember attending a party at Buckingham Palace, and before I did so, they said, you've got to provide all these details about you and your wife so we can do various checks and that sort of thing.
Bring along 2 pieces of security, 2 pieces of ID as well.
And still you got in. That's amazing.
As you would expect and want them to.
Yeah.
So the idea that, you know, Epstein can just suggest some young lady and then she's waved through the gate to spend the evening with Andrew.
Because it has been pointed out, it's a fair point, that the palace does log all visits, and surely they could help with this. Surely that information exists that they could and should make available to authorities.
Well, from everything I've heard, generally the palace are meticulous with their records. And you've also got the Metropolitan Police. I mean, some of the things that are coming out, they take my breath away. I mean, remember that when Andrew stayed at Epstein's New York apartment after he'd been released from his prison sentence for procurement of a child for prostitution, Andrew was accompanied by Metropolitan Police officers.
Yeah.
They didn't stay at Epstein's house, they stayed elsewhere, but they knew all about it. And at no point did anyone say, is this really wise for him to be meeting him? I just find it really extraordinary.
I think so too. But so does that give you any confidence that the palace will willingly help with this kind of logged information?
Well, they've certainly said, and we've just heard in that statement, the King saying that, you know, they want to help, and to be honest, they may be forced to if there's a criminal investigation into various things.
Well, we will get to that, but this seems like a good time now to look at the results from last week's poll, where we asked newsletter readers, is King Charles right to support Andrew financially? 56% of you said no, he should be cut off. 30% of you said yes, or he'll seek income elsewhere, while 14% took the interesting option of yes, but only if he tells the truth about Epstein to authorities. Now, some really interesting results there, and a reminder that if you want to take part in those votes, all you need to do is sign up to our free Palace Confidential newsletter. There's already more than 50,000 of you who do so. Thank you for that. So if you don't hesitate. You can sign up via your phone using the QR code on the screen now, or you can click the link in the description below and you'll get the latest news from our brilliant experts once a week. And just in case I haven't mentioned it before, it's free. You can always also share your thoughts and questions with us in the comments. And the first question is a great one. It relates to what we were just talking about. It's come in from Cynthia Flood, who asks, I have to ask, don't you think the royal family might want to avoid the scandal of having Andrew submit to an official investigation? Seems to me the monarchy is on pretty shaky ground right now. Could it withstand such horrible exposure? It's a big, interesting question, Rebecca. What do you think?
Oh, these are very dangerous times for the monarchy. The only prosecution we've ever seen with a member of the royal family, of course, was Princess Anne, when her dog bit some children in a park several decades ago. But obviously what we're seeing levelled at the former Prince Andrew, is incredibly serious indeed.
Slightly more.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Well, obviously it's not good for children to bite dogs.
No.
Children to bite dogs.
That's not good either. Yeah.
And Princess Anne did plead guilty, didn't she?
She did, yeah. And again, I think what's difficult for the palace is I don't think they know which way Andrew's going to go, because let us not forget, we're asking a lot about what the current working royal family think about this. We still haven't heard anything from Andrew himself. He's maintained an absolute deafening silence in the face of allegation after allegation after allegation. And as I said on the programme this week, I don't see how he can maintain this.
No.
You know, what is going on? Emails to his office don't even get a confirmation that they've arrived.
And we keep stressing on this programme that he denies all wrongdoing, but that's going back to his statements, which are quite old now.
I was thinking about that the other day, because I get quite angry about this now, Richard. I feel like we should say he has previously denied wrongdoing. We know nothing about what he says about any of this, and that evidence is building up and building up against him.
Is it because he just doesn't reply? Or
literally every request you make, and not just from the Daily Mail, whether it's the BBC or other newspapers, it just goes into the ether. And I think I mentioned on the programme the other week that in in years gone past, you would expect to see, not in the Daily Mail, I have to say, but in more Andrew-friendly newspapers, you might see a friend of his saying, well, a friend of his commented or said something. Even that's gone, you know, very, very quiet.
Well, it's interesting. I saw Lizzie Cundy, who's been a minor celebrity here, who's a friend of Fergie's. Even she was on a programme the other day saying, "Yeah, I've been lied to. I'm not sticking up for her anymore." It's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, a question come statement from Ruth Edwards Shirley here, who was responding to Richard's comments about Princess Beatrice and Eugenie last week. A comment for Richard regarding the lack of awareness/curiosity of the then young princesses regarding Epstein. Do you not think that would require more emotional maturity and awareness than they were then in possession of, given the abominable behaviour of totally unaware parents who are to this day incapable of reading the room? Who was going to teach them that? I actually think it's remarkable that they're as professional as they are, given their role models. These poor girls must be constantly, horrifically embarrassed and humiliated by their awfully inappropriate parents, so let's show them some grace. A lot of questions in there, actually. Richard, your Mail Plus comment today deals with Beatrice, doesn't it? What are you saying?
Yes, because I've always been very sympathetic to them because I've found them sensible and level-headed and that sort of thing. And I felt sorry for they have to suffer and be tainted by the sins of their parents. But I have to say, the more that comes out from the Epstein files, the more disturbed I have become. And that's what I've written about for my piece for the Mail today. And for example, the latest files that we've read was how Sarah Ferguson was saying that she'd spoken to Beatrice and they were basically coming up with an idea of how to deal with the allegations against Epstein, and they were going to say that it was fine to deal with him again once he's been released from prison because he'd served his time. And that was going to be their line, which they'd agreed on. You know, and previously we've heard that they didn't want anything to do with him after that. You know, we've had Andrew telling us that he only met him to tell him he didn't want to see him again. And so Beatrice has very much been a part of that, unfortunately. And that's why I have changed my view about them having future royal roles. And gosh, when their biggest cheerleader, is having a rethink. Well, nobody likes to be lied to, do they? That's the thing, and we have been lied to by Sarah Ferguson and by Prince Andrew. Well, we'll put a link to Richard's article in the link below, and you'll also get links to that sort of thing in our newsletter. Let's go to some of the comments on reading the royals now. This week, Richard charted the rise and fall, then the rise and fall again of Sarah Ferguson, formerly the Duchess of York. It's a really great watch, and if you missed it, it will play straight after this. The Talking Meat Suit asks, that's a name, isn't it? The Talking Meat Suit asks, is she still called Duchess even after Andrew lost his title? Interesting. What's the answer, Richard? Well, the curious answer is yes, she is still Sarah, Duchess of York, because the Duke of York does still retain his title. Oh, yes, of course. We've discussed this, yeah. Yeah, we'd need to have some sort of Act of Parliament to remove it, and there's no sign of that. The same as they decided not to, actually, with the senior politician, Peter Mandelson, who is still Lord Mandelson. Andrew basically agreed, we understand, not to use his title, so Sarah is not using hers either, so she now is back to Sarah Ferguson. And to be fair, lots of people carried on calling her Sarah Ferguson Fergie anyway, didn't they? I don't think Fergie's going to stick much longer. It's too cuddly.
It's a fair point, Jo.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And this question is mischievous, but let's ask it. Southern Sunshine asks, what in heaven's name did Fergie spend all that money on? Her clothes were horrid and she has no serious jewellery. I've never heard anyone discuss where her money went. Oh, that's unkind. Do you know, Rebecca? Where does her money go?
Again, it's a very good question. I can't give a complete answer to it, but I can maybe give you a little bit of information from my experience. So she's always been known as a profligate spender, just ordering things she didn't need. I heard there was always a constant stream of Amazon packages. And yes, I wrote that in the Mail the other day. And always kind of overly generous towards people. And in 2009, 2010, when she was caught up in that whole fake shake scandal and admitted that she was in, serious risk of bankruptcy again, I ran a series of very, very well-sourced stories that she was, in the run-up to that, in big financial trouble. For example, I was told she owed £10,000–15,000 to the local printing. She got invitations and cards, personalised cards printed up, which doesn't sound a lot, but actually for a small business in the Ascot area, it meant they could have possibly not paid their wages for the staff for a month. And even knowing that she was spiralling into this kind of, black hole of debt, she spent £50,000 ordering a portrait being painted of the girls for Andrew's birthday. All of which, I must say, were denied by her press team at the time. And I went ahead and ran the stories because I knew they were so well sourced. And they kept saying, why are you trying to suggest that she's got money problems? She hasn't, when I knew she had. And then it all exploded, actually, while I was on maternity leave with the whole fake shake issue. So I felt quite justified then in sticking to my guns and running them. So I know she's pretty profligate in her spending.
Right, well, Southern Sunshine, we'll have more on Fergie's money issues coming up, but we also have had a few comments asking us why we're focusing just on Andrew and Fergie and not the other names in the Epstein files. And the simple answer is we're a royal show and that's why we focus on them. Another question we've heard a lot is this sort of thing from Carla Vicelli, who asks, who covered for Andrew all those years at the palace? Do you really think nobody knew? Rebecca, how does one answer that?
Well, that's a tricky question. And again, not a straightforward answer. I think, as I said on the programme last week, Andrew really operated within a silo of his own within the royal family. Because he had this kind of globe-trotting role, it meant it was more of a kind of quasi-governmental role. And I think I explained, as a journalist, you would ring up and, how's he travelling? Whose money is he spending? What plane's he on? When he suddenly pop up in places like Kazakhstan, and people would go, we don't know, his office don't tell us. Of course, I do believe there were strong concerns about Andrew for a long period of time, especially as stories started coming out about his questionable links with President Gaddafi's son and in some kind of Central and Eastern European countries. So I think there are some people who probably know a little bit more that's been said over the years, but I suspect they're probably feeling slightly uncomfortable now. But also, none of his staff work there anymore. Those people have long moved on. So I think it's going to be quite difficult to track them down, but also to get them to answer questions unless there's the police involved. So,
gosh,
tricky.
What a mess. I think I said that last week. What a mess. Well, do keep those comments and questions coming in. We'll try to answer a few more in our next show. And a question for you to answer. Would you like Palace Confidential merchandise? What would you like? Let us know in the comments below. Would you like a little coaster with Richard's face on it?
Fridge
socks, Palace Confidential socks.
I do like fridge magnets. We always get one when we're on holiday.
I do.
Oh, there you go. There's a few ideas just to get you going. Let us know. But as much as we love your comments and questions, obviously I've got a few more of my own about Andrew that I need to ask our wonderful panel. Now, Richard, we do have proof that he lied to Emily Maitlis in the infamous Newsnight interview. As it turns out, he spent 9 days visiting Epstein in New York rather than the 4 he claimed. So even if he does come forward, what can we believe? I mean, what other disturbing details about this visit have emerged?
I mean, it's hard not to laugh when you think about his answer of just going to tell him face to face that he didn't want to see him again. He was there, it turns out, for 9 days. And towards the end of the stay, because all these emails are now coming out, they're really embarrassing. It's things like, we're having a spectacular party this evening because it's Andrew's last night, bring the girls in, that sort of thing. And then there was actually another occasion later when he stayed as well, which he'd previously denied, but he'd gone back for another stay in the New York apartment.
And I heard a delicious detail that the actual picture of him speaking with Jeffrey Epstein, the part, was taken on the 7th day of the visit, not this supposed 4-day visit.
No, I mean, that was a long stay, and they were clearly desperate to see him. I mean, and Fergie as well. I mean, she met him in Miami within a week with her daughters, within a week of his release. They were having lunch, I think, 2 days after his release. And it turns out that she was emailing him for advice while he was still in prison.
And what about this bizarre little tidbit about Andrew watching a DVD of the King's speech?
Well, this was, oh my good.
Richard, you're going to put me off my lunch
I know,
with this
quite.
bit.
Yeah, I'm not being funny, but if you were to sort of write these details in a novel or something, your publisher would say,
No one's going to believe this.
This is too far-fetched,
Yeah.
this is ridiculous. But no, he was having a foot massage, apparently, from one of the ladies employed
This is
by
Andrew, yeah.
Epstein, yes. So he was having a foot massage while watching the King's speech on DVD. Now, this was a special preview DVD which had been sent by Harvey Weinstein.
Oh, that other great upstanding
Another
gentleman.
sex offender
Yeah.
who's still in prison. But surprise, surprise, he was a mate of Jeffrey Epstein. And the reason they were so keen for Andrew to watch this film, great film by the way, I love it, it went on to win Oscars, was because they wanted Queen Elizabeth, him to get the Queen to watch it, so that in the pre-publicity they could tell journalists like me, oh, by the way, we've heard the Queen loves it,
Oh my God!
But it's a shame actually. Your memories of this great film are sort of tarnished by all this.
Yeah,
sort of stuff.
I'm just going to think of foot massages now.
Yeah.
I'll never be able to watch it again. Rebecca, there was one email from that week where Epstein was bragging about his royal visitor, but there was one part of that email that stuck with you, wasn't there?
Yeah, it sent the hairs on the back of my neck prickling, I have to say, because he was writing to a friend and saying, as you said, bragging he's had Andrew staying for the week and saying that, great insight. And we wonder what that insight
what does that
could
mean?
be. Yeah.
Well, we've always thought of Prince Andrew as, he's a bit stupid, basically. What use would he be? But here, you have Epstein saying, actually, there's some good insights. And I think that may be because of documents that he had sent him.
Well, that links rather nicely, that point, to an extraordinary article in the Daily Mail written by the historian Andrew Loney. And he's written that a report compiled by American security officials suggests some pretty jaw-dropping stuff.
Well, yes. I mean, this was that Epstein was working for the Russians, providing information to them. And, a way allegedly to lure Andrew in was via these women. And then he could provide stuff. And we now know from documents we've seen in the files that he was sending documents to Epstein, in return. So this may be the subject of a criminal investigation to come.
Well, interesting, isn't it? Because, Rebecca, these files suggest that Andrew forwarded an email to Epstein from his Buckingham Palace office that contained government reports from foreign trips. And some are claiming that if it's true, that would constitute a criminal offence.
Absolutely, and I was commenting on this on social media this week, that this is among some, I think, the most serious allegations we've seen levelled at him, because it is misconduct in a public office.
Yeah.
And it seems that within minutes, literally minutes of him, less than 5 minutes of him receiving reports about some of these big business trips on him, he is forwarding them on to Jeffrey Epstein, going, have a look at this, what do you think? And talking about investment opportunities.
Imagine that's the first thing he's thinking of
Yeah,
when he receives
exactly.
that. Instead of thinking, that's an interesting point, or perhaps replying or something, he's thinking, I know Epstein will love this.
Well, he even
Yeah.
said in his Newsnight interview, when Emily Maitler sort of said, do you regret your involvement with him? He was like, well, no, because it was so great for contacts and so useful. It's like, it's all part of that, isn't it?
Yeah, for the opportunities it opened to me. And now we're seeing what happened, that this seems to be the kind of quid pro quo, that if Epstein, helps him live this lifestyle he hankers after, Andrew is giving him what seems to be what should remain private information. He has no right to be sending this on to Epstein. And again, this is something that is now the subject of police investigations.
So what happens now, Richard? Is Andrew in legal jeopardy?
Well, I think to explain to our viewers, part of the reason it's so serious is because the man who was Deputy Prime Minister, very senior minister, Peter Mandelson, is also accused of forwarding secret documents or confidential documents from the government to Epstein. And there's a lot of pressure on the police and the prosecutors to really go for Mandelson. And this is coming from people like our former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. So there's a lot of pressure. And if Mandelson is being prosecuted, and Andrew was doing similar things, or the same thing, you would think he would be prosecuted as well. So yes, Andrew is in serious legal jeopardy, I would suggest. And this is a big problem for the royal family in the months and possibly years to come.
Gosh, it really is. Now, Rebecca, lawyers for this second woman who claims that Epstein sent her to the UK for a sexual encounter with Andrew at Royal Lodge in 2010 has urged King Charles to issue a real apology, quote unquote. Should he?
This is really tricky territory for the King. And I understand and I sympathise with people's desire to hear the word apology. I've been talking to people quite a lot about this week because I do think it's a fundamental issue at the heart of all of what's going on, particularly as regards the royal family. And what's explained to me is this, is really the King's having to think 2, 3, 4, even 5 steps ahead. If Andrew faces being prosecuted in a court of law, that law is dispensed in the King, that justice is dispensed in the King's name, and in the UK we have the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. And it's explained to me, look, if the King comes out and does a big mea culpa, a big apology, condemns his brother, if his brother then goes on to be prosecuted, it wouldn't take much of a clever lawyer to say, look, this man is never going to get a fair trial because the man whose name justice is being dispensed in has already condemned him, has already found him guilty, in effect. So they've got to be quite careful. But I do sympathise with what people are saying. And I'm not saying this is an apologist for the royal family. I'm not sure even I know what the answer is. I understand why people want to hear the word sorry, but I think this may account for why they have chosen their words very carefully in this respect by talking about the sympathy for all victims of abuse.
But then there's claims coming now from quite serious figures that the future of the monarchy depends on how they handle this situation now.
I don't disagree with that at all. I think this is crunch time for the British monarchy. You know, one of their members, even though he's now not a working royal and has been effectively exiled both publicly, professionally and personally, he is facing very, very serious criminal investigations, and this is a very, very dangerous time for them.
Richard, the Mail on Sunday newspaper made a strange cameo in the Epstein files. After it published the first interview with the late Virginia Giuffre, what can you tell us?
Well, this was Peter Mandelson, who I've just mentioned,
Yeah.
who was urging Epstein to instruct the firm Shillings. Now, this is a law firm which I have to deal with almost on a weekly basis because they're really tough lawyers and they see themselves as reputation management, I think they call themselves. And they deal with the most odious people, frankly, trying to get stories pulled that they might not, these stories often might not be libelous or whatever, they just don't like them. And so they come down with a ton of bricks, make your life hard as a journalist and just try to make life as hard as possible for people like me and the Mail on Sunday who are trying to get to the truth.
Well, you know who previously used Shillings?
Now, who's that?
Harry and Meghan.
Interesting.
I had letters from them via Shillings myself.
Funny that. Now, Rebecca, we're not always popular as journalists, but our fellow journalists have been chasing this story for a long time, haven't they?
We have, and I do feel like I should speak up in defence of, you know, my industry because it's very difficult trying to investigate the royal family or members of the royal family. They're not subject to freedom of information laws that other people would be in this country, and there is a bit of a, you know, shroud of secrecy around them. But you know, certain individuals and papers within the industry have really plugged away at this over the years, and I would actually say the Mail, and particularly the Mail on Sunday, have been really instrumental in that. Let's not forget, if it wasn't for the Mail on Sunday first publishing the emails last year that proved Andrew had lied in his Newsnight interview, Buckingham Palace would have never been able to announce they were stripping him of his remaining titles and effectively kicking him out of Royal Lodge. It was the first time they'd had proof that he'd lied to them personally, but lied to us as the British public. So I do think journalists have been very, very instrumental in this.
And look what we have to put up with. Viewers can see that people such as Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson are willing to lie and lie again to the British people, I would say, to cover up things they've done.
Yep. Well, this is an awkward topic, Richard, but many are now asking if we should hold the late Queen Elizabeth II to account for not dealing with Andrew earlier and pushing the scandal down the road for Charles to deal with. What do you think that's fair? What are your thoughts?
I don't know if she sort of pushed it down the road so much as I think that's the thing about, as a mother, isn't it? That she loved her son, and so she wanted to believe, perhaps even at times against all evidence, what he told her. And I think the reason she agreed to fund that settlement so that he didn't have to go to a civil court in America against Virginia Giuffre was because she believed what he told her, that none of this was true. Remember the context. I mean, this was taking place during Queen Elizabeth's Platinum Jubilee celebrations, which we were all looking forward to. So the idea of it being overshadowed by this tawdry court case in New York, no one in the royal family wanted that.
Well, from Andrew to his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson now. Rebecca, you wrote a pretty punchy article on Wednesday updating us on Fergie's suggesting that she might be making a comeback.
Yeah, so my sources have been telling me she's been speaking quite openly about where she goes next. She's lying low at the moment. We've heard no public statement from her either over the many allegations levelled against her. But that she was already kind of thinking to the future, that she wants to set up home again at Windsor, whether it's renting or buying, but also she wants to make some kind of public comeback for the simple reason she needs the money. And as part of that, she's been asking people advice for PR people to help try and, I think, regain her public image. But of course, I know the people I've been speaking to have said, well, I don't think anyone would want to touch her with a barge pole at the moment. And also, we're not sure how she would pay for it. But she's saying, look, I need money. I need to get back to work. I need people around me that can help me do that.
So what kind of work do you imagine she's looking to do?
I mean, could she be looking to pick up the threads of her role as an author? Maybe not a children's author, but she's obviously brought out those kind of romance-style historical novels. She might still be able to do that. I don't know. I'm not a PR advisor, and I think even the best one would find this quite a challenging job to take on.
Why can't Sarah just accept that is in the past? Look, now just be a loving grandmother. She's got 2 daughters who are well off, Beatrice's husband, Edo's making lots of money. Can't she just go and, live with them or near them and enjoy spending time with her grandchildren? Why does she have to start on this money-making, exercise all over again?
Because any kind of money-making exercise at the level that I'm assuming she wants would need profile, which is just not going to be accessible to her, I would have thought.
I think you've got it spot on, and I think that's always been Sarah and also Andrew's, but to a slightly lesser extent, problem is they've hankered over a lifestyle. They hang around with a lot of millionaires and actually billionaires, and they hanker over that lifestyle, but they don't actually have the funds to do it, which have led them down into all sorts of roads of get-rich-quick schemes that have often ended in failure.
Well, here was an interesting tidbit, Richard, from the Epstein files. This is an extraordinary offer Fergie apparently received from the British billionaire John Caldwell. He's the founder of the mobile phone shop Phones for You. Now, writing to Epstein while he was in jail, again, Fergie revealed that Caldwell had offered her £10 million in return of 50% of her net profits for life. Did this ever amount to anything?
My goodness, I mean, she should have been biting his hand off, not writing to some convict.
It sounds very Dragon's Den, doesn't
advice.
It? Yeah.
John Caldwell is a long-term friend of Sarah and her daughters, and he's a generous philanthropist as well, and he has a charity. Sarah's often attended his annual ball, the Butterfly Ball. I've written about it, for years. So it sounds like he was genuinely trying to help, but he's made clear that never actually happened. So it may be that Epstein advised her not to take it because he wanted to carry on with that influence over her, perhaps. Who knows?
And John Caldwell said that he had no idea she was in discussions with Epstein, and he never had any discussions with Epstein himself, and just said it never came to fruition.
Then.
No.
Yeah.
He'll be disappointed by this, because just to be mentioned in the same story as Epstein is not something he would welcome
that anyone wants, exactly. And Rebecca, Princess Eugenie was in the Middle East this week. Do you know why?
So she's director of House and Worth, which is an art firm, and she was out there attending a big annual event. She's attended it in the past, but obviously anything that she does at the moment, even if it's something connected with her job or philanthropic efforts, has a certain spotlight on it that she may not welcome.
Richard, do you think that the Middle East is really the best place for either of the York sisters to be at the moment, given Andrew's links to there?
Well, yeah, I mean, in some sense it's awkward, but the fact is, you know, with Eugenie's role, she goes to the Middle East a lot because they're big art collectors, they're big art buyers at the moment, and they have some important events there that she, and Beatrice as well, regularly attends events. So I think it is the nature of their work, but obviously it does bring back memories of Andrew and all his money that he sought in the Middle East.
Right, well, once again, we couldn't let the show finish without some good royal news, so this takes us abroad too, as William and Eugenie are not the only royals to have been jet-setting across the globe this week. Princess Anne's daughter Zara and her husband Mike Tyndall were in Texas, the city of Fort Worth to be precise, and appropriately enough given that they were in a place called Cowtown. Here they are riding a mechanical bull at a local honky-tonk bar called Billy Bob's. Rebecca, there's a sentence I never imagined I'd be concocting. Tell us about this trip.
I love the way you pronounce honky-tonk. You sound very posh when you do
Well,
it.
you know, it happens every
Honky-tonk.
now and again. I can sound posh. Yeah.
They were with the US singer John Osborne. They've obviously gone out for a bit of a jolly. A great picture of them, cowboy hats, having a lark around on a giant bull. I mean, why wouldn't you?
Why wouldn't you? Do you think you could stay on a giant bull for very long?
Actually, I did try it in a bar on holiday once, and let's just say it wasn't pretty.
I
and
want
it
to
wasn't
see that
clever.
video.
Yeah, let's
Come
just
on,
all let
Rebecca.
There is a
that
video
mental
of it
image sink
somewhere.
in for a second.
When you've got kids, unfortunately, there's always someone with a camera going. So yeah, it was bad.
Zara and Mike Tyndall have a great life, don't they? You know, they were in Australia earlier this year. You know, now they're having fun in Texas.
And what always strikes me about those two is they just look really happy together. You know, we've seen over the years a lot of royal marriages that haven't gone well, but we seem to be in quite a good place now as regards the royal family. And they just look like they really like each other and really enjoy each other's company. It always put a smile on my face.
Well, they did meet while having fun at the rugby, didn't they?
They did,
in
yeah.
Australia.
Oh, it's nice that we're all ending with a smile, isn't it? Now, I know we have a lot of viewers from Texas, so tell us in the comments below, did you catch a glimpse of the Tyndalls? And what is the best technique for riding a mechanical bull? Inquiring minds want to know. We do need to know these things.
And what is Cowtown and what is a honky-tonk bar?
Yeah, what is a honky-tonk bar? Tell us all. Oh, did you hear that? It's time for the unsung royal hero of the week. Now, loyal Palace Confidential viewers will all know that Princess Anne was the reason that we made this segment in the first place. And I hear that in a lovely full circle moment, Rebecca, you've nominated the Princess Royal once again.
Well, again, like you say, you want to have something that puts a smile on your face this week, because there is a lot of very negative royal news out there. And there's just been great footage of her. She's been out and about. She's been waving her scarf in the crowd at the Olympics. Obviously, she's a former Olympian herself and is very connected with British Olympic efforts. And there was a really kind of candid footage. You could see her just caught on camera. She's going like that with her scarf. She was also at the rugby as well, a couple of rugby matches this week, and I just thought, God bless Princess Anne.
Indeed. Now, Richard, there was a video of Anne at that rugby match, Scotland versus Italy, that was in Rome, and it's gone viral for a particular reason. What can you tell us?
Well, she didn't realise that the cameras had turned onto her. There was a break in play, and so then eventually the man sitting next to her pointed out, said, look, actually, Mum, you know, you're on camera. And then the fans were cheering for her. I think they were singing her name. I presume that was the Scotland fans rather than the Italians. And she finally sort of acknowledged them a bit. But she was clearly very embarrassed by it. She just wanted to watch the rugby in peace.
But that's very Anne, isn't it, to be surprised that people were cheering for her?
Yes, exactly, and we often see that on engagements with her. When people try to give her flowers, she'll be like, oh, for me, well, thank you, but I'm sure there's someone else you'd prefer to give them to.
And that is why she's the OG of the unsung royal heroes.
Absolutely, Jo, you couldn't have put it better.
Exactly. Now, with Prince William in Riyadh, we thought we would put together a montage of the royals in the Middle East. Hope you enjoy it. Oh, if only we had £1 for every time we spotted a pair of sunglasses in that montage. We could retire. Huge thanks to Rebecca English and Richard Eden for joining me today, and to you, as always, for tuning in. We will see you next time. Bye for now.